Welcome to the Cannabis 101 podcast, your guide through the legalization and consumption of cannabis in Canada and beyond. Here's your host, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to the Cannabis 101 podcast, episode 41. My name is Dean Millard. Thank you very much for being here today with me. And remember, it's not just about getting high, it's about getting healthy with this wonderful plant that we have at our disposal called cannabis. Thanks very much for tuning in. If you're listening, we really appreciate it. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, you may be watching on YouTube or the WeedTube or a stream on our social media outlets. We appreciate you doing that. You can find full episodes at the Cannabis 101 podcast website, which is, of course, cannabis101podcast.ca. Here is what's coming down the pipe for episode 41. Tyler Smith is the creator of The Dope Show. It's very cool. It hopefully is coming to Edmonton soon, depending on what goes on with the world around us. So we're going to find out with Tyler, who's in Seattle, what's going on with that. This Week in Cannabis News brings us David Wiley from the OZ. We're going to talk about cannabis, the cannabis industry being included, hopefully, in the federal government funding, and what else is going on in the world of cannabis, from retail stores to LPs giving back and helping out the medical profession. And our What's That Strain episode today features Chris Ianson, of course, of Nova Cannabis, the Jasper Ave location. We are doing Island Honey from Pure Sun Farms on What's That Strain. Also, our cannabis question could get you a PAX Era, courtesy of our friends at Plant Life. I'll tell you about that in just a second, but I've been telling you about the Cannabis and Hemp Expo for a little bit. Well, it has been rescheduled. Happy to tell you that the Cannabis 101 podcast will be on location October 3rd and 4th at the Edmonton Expo Center. This was supposed to happen in April. It has now been pushed until October because of obvious reasons. You can find out more at cannabishempexpo.com, and we will, probably as we get closer to the date, have some tickets to give away for this one, because we're going to be there. We're going to have our booth set up. You can come by. You can be a part of the giant podcast that we're going to be recording while we are there. So it's going to be a lot of fun at the Edmonton Expo Center, October 3rd and 4th at, and the website again is www.cannabishempexpo.com. So you can get your tickets and more information there. All right, I've talked long enough before we got our groove on. So without further ado, I want to find out, what's your groove?
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Can you dig it?
Kinda grabs you by the boo-boo, don't it?
Pipe in a grape, long in a blend.
This is great. This is the bee's knees.
Can you dig it?
All right, when I say what's your groove, I want to know what you're grooving to if you are while listening to this program. And when I say groove, what are you smoking? What are you eating? What are you going with? That's what I want to know. I want to know what your groove is if you are indeed. Maybe it's a nice CBD to calm you down. Maybe it's an edible. Maybe you've taken some capsules. You rolled a doobie. I don't know. Whatever it is, I want to know what your groove is. And I am going with Riff Sweet Jersey 3. It's very cool, otherwise known as Jean-Guy. And the story behind Jean-Guy, as I've been told it, is pretty awesome. That a stranger dropped off some seeds at a compassion clinic, and it turned into this wonderful strain that we have right now. And they didn't know who it was, so they just named it Jean-Guy, which is, I guess, maybe the John Smith or whatever of English, or French rather. So anyway, whatever, thanks to that compassionate individual, has given this beautiful, beautiful strain. And this is Riff's version, Sweet Jersey 3. Pick this up at Plant Life. I'll tell you more about our good friends at Plant Life in a second. So without further ado, please allow me to get my groove on with a little Sweet Jersey 3, otherwise known as Jean-Guy. I'm going with Stanley, my bong today, if you're watching. So beautiful. It's the, excuse me, the freeze pipe bong that I'm going with. And I'll tell you why I called it Stanley in just, excuse me, 1 second. Now that kind of grabbed me by the boo-boo there, didn't it? As Tommy Chong so elegantly put it in Up in Smoke. All right, I want to also tell you about Lobo Genetics. If you're a regular listener to this podcast, you will know that Cannabis 101 podcast listeners can get 50% off a DNA kit from Lobo Genetics with the promo code Cannabis101. Go to lobogene.com, enter the promo code Cannabis101, all one word, and get 50% off your DNA kit. Now, why do you want a DNA kit? Because it will tell you how you metabolize THC. If you are at any risk for negative mental health effects from THC. Unfortunately, some people are. If you are at any kind of a risk for memory loss from THC. So metabolism, mental health, memory, these things are covered in the THC test at Lobo Genetics. You can also do a CBD genetic test. How you metabolize. There's a ton of information about CBD metabolism on the website lobogene.com. So you can find out all that information. And then the really, really cool part is you get to your dashboard, your very own dashboard at the website, and they have curated products based on your unique profile. You want to be in a happy mood, you need some energy, you want to be focused. There's specific strains for that. Be sleepy, pain relief, if you want to just calm down. It will detail and tailor make the cannabis strain that you need, and it'll give you a bunch of choices as well. And they're working on a few new things, so it's only going to get bigger and better. For me, I always say it's kind of like having my own personal bud tender because I get specific strains that are tailor-made and recommended for me based on my own profile, how I metabolize THC and what risks I am at. So check it out, lobogene.com. Use the promo code Cannabis101, all one word, and you can get 50% off your DNA kit. All right, we'll get into the cannabis question in just a second. That's where you can win a brand new PAX Era. They're really cool. Can't wait to tell you a little bit about that. Until then, here's the weed song from the artist My Dead Dog.
Smoke some grass. It's time to bust out this podcast.
This is the Cannabis 101 podcast, your guide through the legalization and consumption of cannabis in Canada and beyond.
There we go. Get the mic back on. Absolutely love that. Great little ditty from the artist My Dead Dog. Writes those especially for the Cannabis 101 podcast. So we really appreciate that. I'm going to upload those songs to YouTube and the WeedTube, and then you can enjoy them whenever you want as well. All right. It is time now for the cannabis question as we get going on the main part of the show. And for this one, I want to know, what do you name your accessory? If you do. I name everything in my life. Cars, plants, and cannabis accessories. If you're watching, you can see this freeze pipe in the shot, or freeze bong rather. This is called Stanley because a friend of mine said at one point he wanted to have a hit out of my Stanley Cup bong. And so I'm like, all right, well, that's going to be called Stanley. My hexagon, I call the Hexasaurus Rex. From Burnt Designs, I have a Cheech and Chong Church Warden's pipe, which is the long one. It's called Gandalf because that's the one that Gandalf would smoke. So I name everything. I have a whole bunch of things. So I want to know, what do you name your accessories if you do? You can win a Cannabis 101 podcast prize pack this week, courtesy of Plant Life. They have were kind enough to give us a PAX Era to give away. There it is up on the screen right now. These pods are so cool. You can use them with your Android phone if you want to. And they're really awesome. You just drop the pods in. There's a lot of LPs that have signed up. And you're going to love when you open up. I'm not going to open up the box right now. We will mail this to you, by the way, if you are the winner. So you just have to simply chime in on the cannabis question on Twitter. You can reply to us at Cannabis 101 Podcast. Instagram at the Cannabis 101 Podcast, Facebook, the Cannabis 101 Podcast, and you can get us also through email if you would like to stay anonymous but still win this prize package. Email us at cannabis101podcast at gmail.com, and of course you can find everything that you need at www.cannabis101podcast.ca. So there's the PAX Era. And I hope I'm not butchering that too badly. If you want to win it, just chime in at any of the social media feeds or our email and tell me what you name your cannabis accessories. Actually have some good responses on Twitter that came into this. And we always appreciate when people have a little back and forth with us on this. So this is from Justin Cardinal. Pizza Guy Justin used to call into my radio show all the time, text in. I call mine LeBong James. Very nice. Everything is Wrestling says, I once had an orange and blue bong that I nicknamed Bong Stauffer. Named after Bob Stauffer, the color coordinator, color presentation man for the Edmonton Oilers broadcast, also does a very popular radio show. Nick Baker says, named my Dynavape Ruby because she's a gem. Love it. Kylie says, my son's name is Stanley. I don't name my accessories, but I will now. I like it. So we got somebody into the game. Hart Steinfeld says, my last glass piece was Bong Newhart. But then again, all my new pieces are bongs that are new to Hart. Bravo. I like that. And Mark Drabert says Bong Marley. And he's got a bong with a bunch of different hoses, and they totally look like dreads. It's Rastafarian. It is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. There we go. It's very cool stuff. You can get in touch with us once again at the Cannabis 101 Podcast on Twitter, at the Cannabis 101 Podcast on Instagram, the Cannabis 101 Podcast on Facebook, or you can email us and tell us what you name your accessory at Cannabis 101 Podcast at gmail.com. And finally, what goes well with cannabis in this opening segment? That is anything that you pair well with cannabis. Anything that you pair well with cannabis. Let us know what you think. For me, walks alone, which is pretty fitting for where we are right now. So let me know what you pair well with cannabis, and really pretty much anything pairs well with cannabis, but walking alone, which is what a lot of people are unfortunately doing right now, but we are doing our part, hopefully staying home and flattening the curve. All right, when we return, Tyler Smith, the founder, creator, host of The Dope Show, a comic show that tours across North America with a cannabis theme big time. That conversation just on the other side of this.
This is the Cannabis 101 podcast, your guide through the legalization and consumption of cannabis in Canada and beyond.
Very pleased to have on the program via Skype today the man behind The Dope Show, Tyler Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in lockdown right now. Only essential stores are open right now, meaning grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies, and weed stores.
Well, that's good that they are being counted on as a necessity as we go through this. Let's talk a little bit about Tyler, about before we get into the Dope Show concept, just your background. You're a comedian and you're a fan of cannabis, and those two things came together. How long have you been doing stand-up comedy for?
I've been doing stand-up for about 10 years now, going on my 11th this September. But yeah, I've been doing comedy for a long time, and I always, when I started out, I had no money, so I would just bake weed brownies, and I would sell them at the open mics. So I would end up making money from just going to open mics, which was great, because anything helps, right?
Right.
From that, I just kind of got a reputation for being the weed guy, and I had like a lot of weed humor because I was just kind of really in the industry. I worked in the medical marijuana back here in like 2006, and then just did comedy, sold weed brownies, and then ended up starting the show about 10 years later, or 6 years later. But how I got into that was so I used to sell a lot of weed, and I got arrested for it because you're not allowed to do that here. Just without a permit. I got a big slap on the wrist for operating without a business license, and they told me that I had to legitimize my business. So I decided to just run with the concept of the Dope Show, which was I did it a few times and made a few bucks, and I was like, this is something that could actually work on a large scale level across like multiple cities and states if I like really put some effort into it. And that's what we did. So the concept of the show is simple. It's just a comedy show that where comedians perform, and then they go get really baked, they smoke a lot of weed, and then they attempt to perform another set. And we say attempt because it's not gonna go well. Usually, sometimes it's a train wreck. Sometimes you don't even know just seamless. But we've had a lot of mistakes in the show. You never know what you're going to get with the dope show.
So that's an interesting concept, and we should let everybody know that you will be in Edmonton. You have been, I think, before, but when are you coming back to Edmonton so people can look at getting their tickets?
We're scheduled for April 19th at the comic strip in the West Edmonton Mall. Right now, we haven't talked about moving the date because of the whole coronavirus, but right now that's what we're scheduled for.
Well, hopefully those shows will be able to go on and we can get back of some sort of normalcy with our lives. So think back to the very first Dope show. Were you pretty nervous about what might happen that night?
So I was very nervous about anybody coming to the show. That was like the more nerve-wracking part. And the most nerve-wracking part about putting on shows, just getting people out. I remember, like, we had a Wednesday at this divey little club in downtown Seattle. And it went pretty seamless. It was actually a really good show. And I don't think we had any disasters that night. But we were a little bit more liberal with what we were allowed to do because we weren't on the radar back then. So, like, just hand joints out to the crowd, just like throw them off stage like we're a bunch of Snoop Dogg people. And then we got cracked down by the liquor control board. They're like, can't do that. Like, all right. And we used to have an intermission, so everyone could go outside and smoke weed and then come back in. Mm-hmm. But we can't do that because when you have a large crowd of people, if everybody leaves the building, not everybody will come back. It's just kind of people can be shitty sometimes.
Right, yeah.
Like, and I remember the first time we did the show, we had the whole audience. It was probably like 70, 80 people come out. And this place could only hold 100 people, so this was like a pretty jam-packed show. We did the intermission. We all went outside to go smoke weed, and the servers had no idea what was going on. They just came back outside, and they're like, where the fuck is everybody? And, like, just thought that the whole room had walked out on their tabs. So luckily everybody came back, but it just makes the venues nervous to have everybody leave and come back in. So if you come to our shows, you got to come prepared.
Now, you've also had some comedians that did their first set, got high, and also didn't come back in the past, which is, I'm sure it's like terribly nerve-wracking at the time. And then the more you do this, the more you adapt, and it becomes a funny story, but probably not funny on that night and those occasions in the early going.
In the moment, it's terrifying for me, like, because I'm like trying to produce a show and I try and make it as professional as possible, even though we are just a bunch of, like, you know, bohemians getting wasted. We try and make it a professional appearance, but there's been 3 separate occasions where a comedian has smoked a bunch of weed and then just not made it back for 3 different reasons. One, so one of my favorites was this Hans Kim. We were in Portland doing the Dope show. He thought he had enough time to go to the store and buy donuts and come back so he could, like, see the donut store. So he just went and came back with donuts. And by the time he got back, the show had been done. And we're just like, what were you thinking? So, and then there was another time. So we had a guy, what's his name? Dana Carvey, pretty famous comedian.
Yeah.
From SNL. He has a son, and his son is trying to become a comedian. And his son linked up with Dana's opener that he goes on the road with, and, like, his opener is one of my headliners, and she brought Dana Carvey's kid. And this kid said he wanted to do it. He wanted to be part of it. He wanted to try and be a comedian. So we're like, have at it. But you understand the premise. You got to smoke weed and then come back on. He's like, okay, I get it. And so he goes up, he does this time, and then he gets off stage, and he's like really nervous because it didn't like go so well. I'm like, well, don't worry, man. We're all just here to have fun. Smoke a little weed, and we'll get you back up there. You'll have a great time. And he like starts smoking weed. Like he takes one hit, and he like coughs real hard, and then he just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you've smoked weed before? He goes, no, this is my first time smoking weed. I'm
What?
Like, no. Like, maybe, shoot. I'm like, well, all right, don't worry about it. This is just bumps in the road, so you're going to go back up there, aren't you? And then he just starts breathing super hard and, like, sweating profusely. And he's like, I can't. And then he ran away. Not like took off. He ran away from me.
Whoa.
The door, and I chased him for like a block to try and like calm him down.
Yeah.
But I get back on stage, so I was just like, fuck it. So he just pitter-pattered into the distance, and he had sense, so we lost him that night.
Wow. What a time to smoke weed for the first time when you're expected to go back on stage.
Yeah, I wouldn't have recommended it, but it was kind of cool that he popped his cherry on the show. So, but he has since come back. I think 2 years later he came back and did the show again.
And I'd imagine that would be a good bit in his set, talking about the first time he did the dope show. Like, I think that would be a hilarious way to tell a few jokes.
It was a very redeeming moment for him.
Yeah.
I think I got a picture on the website. It's a pretty good one.
Awesome. What is the website, by the way?
The website is whosmokesweed.me. .me. Yeah.
How do you find the sets go? Are there? I'd imagine there's a lot of comedians out there that, like yourself, have experience with cannabis. Does everybody change a little bit? And some, I'd imagine, more than others?
Some, yeah. Some, so just like I explained, some people will run away. But it's kind of like, it's a balance. So the way I book this show is I always make sure there's at least 2 comedians that don't smoke weed normally, and then maybe 1 or 2 that do smoke weed normally.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the people that don't smoke weed, you never know what's going to happen when they try it or when they're on stage. Like, people will smoke weed, or like they say they smoke weed, but then they've never done public speaking on marijuana.
Right, yeah.
Like, you already get a little level of anxiety when you're stoned, and to throw you on stage, it just escalates it, and then you have this mind racing part of the cannabis that you're just like, I can't remember what I was gonna say, and so we try and keep a balance just in case the show goes completely off the rails. We have people that are veterans and can handle their weed.
Are there some comedians out there that are like, you know what, that would be too much for me, there's no way I can handle it, and are scared off by the concept? And on the flip side, there's probably people that are like, get me on stage, I can't wait to do that. But just like there's all different peoples, there's probably different kinds of comedians.
Yeah, the weed comics, anybody who's a weed comic, I mean, everybody who does comedy and has really long hair always wants to be on the show. And everybody who does, I've had a lot of people reject just because they're like, I'm not smoking weed, I'm going on stage. Like, no. But we've had a few people come around. Like, the show wasn't as popular back in the day, like, started it around 5 years ago. So now that it has more popularity and the show is packed out, like, last month at our home club, we had 315 people on the show. Wow. Which is pretty much capacity for that club. And we've had the biggest show we've ever had. We had a turnout of 800 people. So it can get pretty big crowds. That starts to attract bigger stars, and they're like, "All right, let's just give it a go and see how this goes." One of the examples is Brad Upton. He's like he's an older comedian who I think he's like a high school teacher too. So he was like, I can't be doing this. I teach high school. But I think most of the skepticism or ill views of marijuana have been kind of like swept aside.
Mm-hmm.
So he's more into it now.
How about on the legal side? You mentioned when you guys first started, you were throwing joints off of the stage. Here in Canada, thankfully, we are legal countrywide, so you don't have any issues when you come here and consume cannabis. Do you have to stick to states that are legalized, and what legal obstacles do you face?
So, yeah, we do have to stick to states that have at least medical marijuana legalized. We've done one show outside of a legal state. We did Arizona, which is a medical marijuana state. So everybody on the show had to have a medical marijuana card.
Okay.
Luckily, those are pretty easy to get in California. So I pretty much paid everybody to get their medical marijuana cards and have them drive over to Arizona. But that was like one loophole. But up here in Washington, we have the Liquor Control Board controls cannabis as well. So it's the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board. So we do have laws about consuming marijuana in bars and about serving people alcohol that have consumed marijuana, which is a big reason why we don't have the intermission anymore, is because if people smoke weed, then we can't sell them drinks anymore. So it's like, once you're in, you're in. Unprepared, or you're not going to be able to have a drink. So.
Well, and that's the same thing here in Alberta, in our province. The Alberta Liquor Gaming Board, the AGLC, they control liquor and cannabis as well. So they make the rules as well. So how do you handle it for your comedians then that have to get high and come back? Do you guys all leave as a group and have big joint circle outside in the between, or how does that work?
So it depends on where we are. Some of our shows have wonderful sponsors, and some of those sponsors are these party buses. So they're like giant like limousines or whatever that people can go on and smoke weed on. They're technically still domiciles,
right?
So we have that loophole. It's like a vehicle with the driver sectioned off. So we can do that where we have people just go on the bus. But for the most part, we have people just go out, go smoke in the parking lot, and come back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
That's interesting. I really can't wait to get out to this show. So obviously, have you had to cancel some shows because of what's going on right now? Have you had to, and you're hoping that you don't have to cancel the Edmonton one, but have you missed a few shows because of this?
Yeah, I've had to cancel about 13 shows. But I would say we rescheduled them. We just rescheduled everything to like June or July. It's kind of where we're pushing things out to. At least everything that got canceled in March and the first part of April is getting pushed to June, July. Anybody that bought tickets, their tickets automatically for those dates as well.
Okay.
And then if they want a refund, we can totally get them a refund. I can't speak for all the venues because some of the other venues handle the ticket pricing.
Right.
And then I do the show. So, but it's kind of been the general rule is that we're honoring the tickets, just pushing it out. And we're hoping people don't want refunds because I'm like hemorrhaging money, right? So. Oh,
I can imagine this is such a tough time. When it comes to the specific humor of the comics, do they tend to lean towards like marijuana, weed kind of humor, or is it not specifically weed humor?
It's not specifically weed humor. Almost everybody that's on the show has their take on marijuana, so everybody's going to talk about it. I mean, like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
We're at the Dope Show. Everybody wants to hear you talk about it. So each performer will usually say a few things in the beginning about their set, about kind of how they deal with marijuana, their experience with marijuana, and then just kind of go into their set. And if they do that, it's mostly like people are like, man, I can't wait to get high because I've been sober all day for you guys.
Yeah.
Or I am terrified about what's going to happen. And a lot of comedians, like, they get nervous because they don't want audience members to think of them in that aspect. So they're like, please remember me from this 10 minutes and don't take the second part home, you know?
Well, it's so funny because, I mean, like the guy that's saying, I can't wait to get high because I've been sober for you all day. I think his set is not going to be drastically different with his altered state because he's experienced, but I think it would be like almost like a fun car crash watching somebody who doesn't have experience with cannabis try to do stand-up comedy.
For sure. And I agree with you. So I try and make it so that the people who are veterans are completely blitzed out of their minds as well. If somebody comes on my show and they're like, dude, I do this all the time, like I'm not stressing, then we're gonna give them, like, we have infused joints down here, so we just give them something that's really potent, and we're like, all right, there you go.
Yeah.
We've had a few veterans been like, all right, this is a little too much for me.
Good stuff. Is there a comedian that you would love to get on your show? Is there one guy or girl that, or maybe a couple, if there's a few that you would just absolutely love to have on your show that you think would be really, really funny in this aspect?
I would love to have, like, some of my favorite comedians. Like, I'm a big fan of the Sober October crew.
Yeah.
So, like, Tom Segura, I think would be great because he doesn't normally smoke weed, and when he talks about it, he says, I only do like 10 milligram edibles. And I'm like, that's such a baby formula edible, like a 10 milligram. Oh man, all right, whatever. Like, that's what I have before surgery. If I'm performing the surgery, that is. But I would love to have him. That'd be great. I think anybody that's like kind of like a heavy smoker probably wouldn't be the most fun, but it'd still be great to see anybody that, you know, I'm a huge fan of, like Benson, Chappelle, Rogan. I love those guys. It'd be great to have them on. But like Burr and Segura, I would love to have those guys on here just because they don't smoke weed often.
Mm-hmm. And that's the best part. You know, like having a guy, if you were to have a guy like Tommy Chong on, well, he's not going to differ a whole lot in his second set. And, you know, I love Cheech and Chong. I grew up on those guys. But it's like I said, it's the other guys that you want a little bit of a change in the personality when they come out the second time, right? Because you want to see a little bit of a different set.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. That's why I always try and book comedians that don't smoke a whole lot so you can see that contrast. But I do book a lot of like well-known cannabis comedians just because they're meant for this crowd. Like those jokes that they have, that they're well formulated for cannabis users, so they're just like a good treat. It's like a good little treat next to the fun train wreck. It's like we're serving cupcakes next to a car crash.
Giving out cupcakes while you watch the car crash. I like that. How about you know, the popularity? How have you found this is, you know, mentioned there are some comedians that circled back and wanted to be on it. You know, cannabis, marijuana, weed, whatever you want to call it. We're legal here in Canada. There's presidential candidates that are saying it'll be legal in the United States if they win. It's coming. Cannabis is getting more and more popular. This concept, do you find this concept is blowing up as well?
Yeah, I think this concept, like, it's definitely exploded in popularity. I know my numbers have grown significantly since I started it. We got about 45,000 followers now on Facebook. And, like, that's where we do have all of our events and advertising is on Facebook. So if you want to see more of it, check us out. Facebook, /WhoSmokesWeed.me. And the shows are getting more requests. Like, we did one, like, just, like, hemisphere-wide ad to see, like, who wants to come to their shows, or come to their city, bring the show to their city. And it's, everybody wants to see this. It's just, we can't go everywhere. It's definitely sought after. People want to see it.
Oh, that's good. And I'm sure comedy clubs are wanting to bring this concept to their stages as well.
Exactly. As soon as weed gets legalized, like, I imagine the show's going to blow up more than it already has.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That is great. So one more time, when are the dates here in Edmonton? And then people can keep checking out Facebook and the website for updated details. But when are the sites here and dates here in Edmonton?
So we're coming through Canada, April 19th and 20th. We'll be in Edmonton the 19th, then Vancouver the 20th. And you can just stay focused on the House of Comedy or Comic Strip websites or my websites. We'll send out updates on the events if anything gets moved. But right now, we're still locked into the States.
Awesome, man. This has been a lot of fun. I enjoy hearing some of those stories, and I look forward to, fingers crossed, to coming to the show on April 19th in Edmonton. I only wish we had April 20th in Edmonton, and we could have 420 in Edmonton with you, but we'll settle for 419. Looking forward to it.
420.
Yeah, you can't be everywhere. Tyler, thanks so much for joining me on the show today. Best of luck with the quarantine, and as we get through this, can't wait to see you in Edmonton.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me.
What's happening? We'll tell you right now on This Week in Cannabis News.
My good friend David Wiley from the OZ joining me as usual. You can find them at OkanaganZ.com/OZ. Get them on Twitter at OkanaganZ and at Wiley Writer. David, welcome back to the show. How are you during this bizarre time of self-isolation?
Hello. As always, good to talk to you. I'm pretty decent. Everyone in my household at the moment seems healthy, and yet we are actually isolating, spending some time inside, and getting real good at Fortnite.
Awesome. The one thing I spoke to former Edmonton Oiler Rob Schremp yesterday on my other podcast, Sports and More, and he said, this is giving us family time that we wouldn't have had before. So I guess to find a silver lining is important during this time. And one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to brighten somebody's day. We're giving away a PAX Era, courtesy of Plant Life. Really excited about that. And we're doing it through our cannabis question of, do you name your accessories? Because I name everything. Like pretty much every cannabis accessory I own has a name. So do you name any of your accessories, or will you start if you don't?
I don't give them any specific names. I have a Crafty and a Mighty, and that's generally what I call them. I don't think that I could actually improve on those names. So now that you mention it, maybe I'll give them some alliterative names in the future, like Mighty Mike and
there you go.
Crafty Cam.
I like it. Alliteration is fun no matter what you are doing. It's one of my favorite things. One of our listeners said he names his bong LeBong James. So we're getting some interesting things. Bong Marley was one that it was a bong with several different whips on it, and they look like dreads. So I like the Bong Marley one as well. So keep those for the listeners and viewers. Keep those coming in, and you could be eligible for the great prize pack courtesy of Plant Life. All right, David, let's chat a little bit about a few of the stories, and let's start with the cannabis industry making it well known that we want to be part of this support package for businesses in our country. We don't want any special treatment, but we just want equality when it comes to support from the federal government.
A whole bunch of cannabis companies have signed this letter that you mentioned. It's signed and headed over to two high-profile ministers. You got the Minister of Finance, Mr. William Morneau, and the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Mr. Navdeep Bains. They're going to be on, or have been on, the receiving end of this letter. And the argument here is that the cannabis industry faces what's being called economic stigmatization. And basically, we're all calling on the federal government for immediate aid in the midst of this pandemic. Other businesses have gotten it. This isn't a request for special treatment. Like you said, This is just, we're asking for help for an industry that basically added a cumulative total of $8 billion to the Canadian GDP over the course of the last year. And these stimulus measures would help and support an industry that's facing tough times, like every other industry right now. We have challenges with employees, we have challenges with keeping a business going, and at the same time making sure that we're respecting that there is a sickness going on, that we're trying to protect families and workers. And this is a place where the government, we're reliant right now on our government to make sure that our economy can continue to move forward, and that once this is done, once we've moved on with our lives, the people have jobs to go back to. And our cannabis industry has been weathering, as this letter notes, a lot of shocks in the past 6 months. We've seen challenges, including the loss of over 2,000 well-paying jobs in the sector. And we need to make sure that these companies have access to capital and access to credit to make sure that we can weather the storm.
It's so important, and I'm proud to have my signature as part of the more than 70 different people from around the cannabis industry that also put their names on that letter. Big thanks to John Carl from the Alberta Cannabis Council for giving me a heads up, because I want that support. And you're right, it's just equal treatment. And, here's why, one of the big reasons why I think that the cannabis industry should be involved in that, other than the 8 billion reasons that you had mentioned. But in a lot of places, cannabis is being considered essential, and one of the essential needs for people to stay open. So if it's being deemed essential in a lot of places, shouldn't it be included in the stimulus package? Like that, just if it's essential in a lot of places, that means it's important to the community.
It does, and this means equal and fair access to funding through federal agencies like EDC or BDC. The BDC basically said that cannabis industries don't qualify for any help at this point in time, which I find to just be insane. This is a legal industry, and it serves not only recreational customers, but we're talking about medical patients. We're talking about people who need cannabis in order to ease their pain, to increase their appetite. I mean, we've said it again and again, but it's really important for people to understand. Think about cancer patients, for example. Cancer patients are very much helped by the medical cannabis. It helps them to lead at least a somewhat normal life, to eat properly, to get the rest that they need, and to even deal with some of the anxieties that come with this kind of an illness. And we want to make sure that the companies who are providing that help to them can continue on.
You're right. Cannabis patients rely on the plant, whether it's appetite stimulation, whether it's to help with nausea. It's the effects of chemotherapy is a lot of what, from the cancer patients. And, my wife is one twice. My mother had cancer. So I know what chemotherapy can do to the body, and cannabis can really help with a lot of that. So there's a lot of people that might, if you get rid of the cannabis industry, will have to go to the black market, which we all know is dangerous. Now, the good thing, David, for a lot of those people that I just talked about is that a lot of cannabis stores are staying open. We chatted last week about some of them deciding to close. The ones that are opening, or that are staying open right now, first of all, they're taking a lot of precautions, but they're seeing a real buzz in sales.
They are. There's a large amount of sales that are happening. BDS Analytics, which specializes in cannabis market and trends reports, they recently held a webinar to present some of the data that they've collected from retail stores throughout Canada and the U.S. And there were some really interesting trends that they noted. One of them is that flower is just flying off the shelves. People are stocking up on good old-fashioned bud. They are choosing strains generally that are really high in CBD, and that's not something that we saw initially in legalization. The high THC strains were the big sellers, and now seems like people seem to be turning to the high CBD strains to deal with some of the anxieties that they're facing in these troubled times. And cannabis retailers across North America are saying that they're determined to keep their doors open. They say we're here to stay, basically, and to the best of their ability, they're going to keep the doors open. That means in some cases, I've heard of some chains putting up barriers, almost like you're starting to see in grocery stores, to keep their frontline employees protected. There's a lot of extra sanitization that's happening. Now, the BDS has noted that the supply chain is strong, so there's not a shortage in product as far as cannabis is concerned. But one of the stressors that they're facing is that they can't get enough cleaning products, or in some cases, one of the retailers noted that they couldn't get enough coffee. So I'm sure that we can all absolutely understand that need. Basically, going forward, there's a lot of optimism based on the fact that Ontario, for example, has designated cannabis retail and production to be essential. That's following the lead of other jurisdictions that include San Francisco and Los Angeles. So that's going to be really important going forward, and it sets the tone as the municipalities across the country really are grappling with those similar questions. And BDS and a lot of us, of course, are hoping that municipalities, provinces, all the different jurisdictions are going to see the need to make these essential businesses. As far as other things, I mean, some of the retailers have characterized this time as being as busy or busier than 420. And they're starting to experience staffing shortages as this pandemic unfolds. Some employees may just have a fear of being out and trying to take care of the safety of their families. Some employees are falling ill, whether it's COVID or whether it's flu or cold, whatever it is. The precaution is to stay home if you're feeling sick. But so far, retailers are saying that they've been able to cover those gaps by assigning more hours to the remaining staff. Though BDS is noting that if staffing does start to become tighter, that could become a constraint with stores. I have heard of a few that have closed because the employees gotten sick and they just don't have the staffing there to keep on going.
Yeah, that is the case in some stores in this area, and yeah, those are the only two things that I think will prevent stores from staying open. Is if they don't have enough staff, and then the other thing on the production side is a lot of the tubs and different things, the packaging comes from China, so. We have to be a little bit worried about that, depending on how long this goes. I don't think there's an immediate concern, but depending on how long this takes to run its course and what is going on in China, that's kind of the only reason that you would see any of the stores close. And I've been in a couple of them to pick up a couple of things lately, and they're taking extraordinary precautions. Fire and Flower has gone to pick up the fast lane basically only, so you order online, you get there, you pay, hopefully with tap, no cash. I've even heard of some stores like closing up the magnetic strip area, so it's only tap that you can use. So they are taking extraordinary precautions to keep the customers and particularly the staff safe, because you just don't know who is walking through that door and where they've been right now.
Mm-hmm. We're starting to see other trends develop too. Ordering ahead is starting to become quite popular. A lot of retailers would really like the option to have delivery.
Yes.
That'll keep people in their homes. And I think that that's something that would be great to see a quick acting federal law to allow that across the country, especially as more jurisdictions deem this to be essential. There were some interesting notes, too, about just consumer habits. And BDS is saying that generally people consume in the evening, but being locked down inside all day, we're starting to see a little bit more consumption through the day. People are spending a lot more time alone in their homes, and that does create a bit of an uptick in cannabis consumption. And overall, people are feeling anxious about the future. They're alone. They can't go to the gym or do other things that they might do to relax. So we are seeing an increase in consumption and a demand for more product. So what you're seeing at the store level is, people are buying more flower and they are buying it in larger formats too.
Well, and this is why I think delivery makes sense right now. One of the fastest growing demographics in the cannabis industry is seniors. Like you talk to a lot of people at different companies, and seniors are starting to really get into cannabis for whatever reason. Who are the the most impacted and for we fear the most for right now with COVID-19 is the senior population. So they're definitely not going to want to go out to get their cannabis. So that's why I think delivery makes such sense right now for that demographic of the cannabis consumer.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that.
So hopefully that happens, like you said, across the country. And while the cannabis industry, as we mentioned, especially some retail stores, creating a lot of sales right now, they're also giving back to frontline workers. The medical staff are facing the worst of this virus on a daily basis. And the cannabis industry has a lot of safety gear, you might call it, and they're giving it to frontline workers right now, a few different companies, aren't they?
And we're so happy to see that. That kind of generosity is really needed right now. A lot of us in our everyday lives, we've seen runs on things that we need every day. Toilet paper went real fast for some reason or other. Hand sanitizer, canned goods. In my neck of the woods, one couple even went so far as to buy out the entire meat section at a local grocery store, leaving none for others. So that kind of selfishness and hoarding right now is unfortunately a fact of life. And from my point of view, the run on face masks has been one of the most distressing developments that I've seen. It's leaving our frontline healthcare workers, those people who are treating your grandma, your grandpa, young people who are in ICU because of COVID. They're lacking protection because there's just, unfortunately, there's not enough personal protective gear to go around. So, enter the heroes that the cannabis industry really needs right now. And drawing from their own supply, we've seen several major cannabis producers, including Canopy Growth and Hexo. They're providing hospitals with personal protective equipment, including face masks, gloves, and bodysuits, from whatever they have in their surplus supply. So basically, this is the same kind of equipment that these licensed producers need to don when they're going into growing rooms to ensure a sterile environment and prevent contamination. And at the moment, some of them have a little bit of extra at a point where we're actually seeing some hospitals, if you can believe it, reusing protective gear because they just don't have it. That's not an ideal situation. We talked a little while ago about Canopy Growth closing its two massive greenhouses in BC, and perhaps a silver lining to that shutdown is that the companies noted that they've been able to donate thousands of gloves and tie suits and masks from those facilities to the frontline healthcare workers who need it. Hexo says it's donated about 150 N95 face masks to paramedic services in Quebec. And BNN Bloomberg says that in its reporting, it's heard from other cannabis producers that are in the process of donating these supplies too. Unfortunately, it's not across the board. Cannabis companies do also need this gear, and like we talked about a little bit earlier, these are essential services. So some companies like Aurora, Organigram, Tilray, they just don't have the stock to donate. But we're seeing other businesses, other companies now too, that are starting to mass produce masks and protective equipment. Bauer, for example, is getting into the game, and they're starting to create some PPE. And other companies too, like Tesla and Apple, are manufacturing and donating some equipment that they have surplus on.
Well, and that's the great thing that you can find during. I mean, you can go on and see the people on the beach that are ignoring this or having coronavirus parties and just being ridiculous people, or the people that think this is a made up event. So you can find all that if you want But you can also find the stories of people giving back, and the Broadway seamstresses that are out of work right now that are saying we'll sew whatever equipment, we'll do this, and the companies that have 3D printers pitching in, and the cannabis industry is no different. We all want to be friendly in the cannabis industry in general, and I'm not surprised that certain companies have pitched in to try to help out, and that, like I said, is the one thing that you can find during this that at least maybe can put a smile on your face or make you be proud that you're in this industry.
Absolutely. And to circle back to what we first talked about, these businesses are essential, and these businesses do deserve and do need federal aid in order to continue to do the good work that they're doing.
Well said, David. Thanks as always for joining me. I look forward to hearing more names of your accessories in the future. And first and foremost, stay well and stay healthy to you and your family. Thanks as always, David.
Thank you.
This is the Cannabis 101 podcast, your guide through the legalization and consumption of cannabis in Canada and beyond.
All right, just want to let you know that we are continuing with our 420 followers contest on Instagram. We did this on Twitter, awarded a big prize package. So once we get to 420 Instagram followers, we will be giving away another prize pack, and you can follow us on Instagram at the Cannabis 101 Podcast. Everybody that follows us when we get to 420 will be eligible for this prize pack. We're also going to be doing something during April in regards to our website. We're going to have a big giveaway at the end of April. Stay tuned for that. We'll release details as we get closer to the end of the month.
What's that strain? Let's find out with Chris Ianson, Nova Cannabis store manager and educator.
All right, my good friend Chris Ianson joining me from not in studio this time because we are being smart about things. So he joins us from his casa. Chris, welcome to What's That Strain in the Cannabis 101 podcast as usual. Thanks very much for doing this as we're doing our part for social distancing.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having me again, Dean. It's great to be here. This is going to be interesting. My first Skype podcast here, but let's do it.
All righty, we are doing something called Island Honey today, and it is a sativa from Pure Sun Farms. So tell us a little bit about Pure Sun Farms, and then we'll get into a little bit more about Island Honey, which is a pretty heavy sativa.
Yeah, for sure. So Pure Sun Farms, they're a pretty new LP to the Alberta rec market, but they have been in BC and Ontario for a little bit. They first launched onto the scene in September of 2019, and they just took over. Ended up doing huge sales in Ontario. They were actually the top-selling brand in the Ontario province of Ontario for dollars sold and kilograms sold as well. So real pumped to, I guess, have them in Alberta. Got a chance to meet some of their people over at the Canadian Cannabis Awards. Great crew of people. And then to finally get to smoke their stuff and have it in store has been really nice. So
yeah, that's the cool thing, isn't it, Chris? Is that you meet a lot of people, you hear about a lot of these really cool strains, and then when you get to enjoy, you know a little bit about, how much work has maybe gone into what they're doing, and the is it going to live up to the hype? And most times it does. So I think that's the cool thing about, that's the way I felt about the Green Organic Dutchman when it finally came into the market. I had heard so much about it, and then it was really, really tasty as well. So there's a connection with a vegetable farm and cannabis when it comes to Pure Sun Farms, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It's a really cool story. So Pure Sun Farms is a 50-50 joint venture between Village Farms International and their vegetables. They've been growing vegetables for 15 to 25 years actually. And they've got all these big greenhouses, and they partnered up with Emerald Health Therapeutics. And they've been a medicinal and now currently a recreational licensed producer here in Canada as well. So partnered up vegetables and cannabis into Pure Sun Farms.
I like it.
Cool.
And it's they seem to go hand in hand. I've yet to dip my toes in growing, but people that I've talked to, and you yourself have grown, tomatoes and cannabis are fairly similar from what they say when it comes to growing.
Yeah, they are for sure. Definitely. Actually, one of my friends, he's growing some cannabis plants in his tent, and he's got some vegetables going next to them as well. It all works together. That's pretty cool.
For sure. I was just going to mention, when it comes to Pure Sun Farms, you mentioned they're very, very popular in Ontario, but they're also one of the biggest single producers out there.
Yeah, that's right, Dean. They they're one of Canada's largest single site licensed producers of greenhouse grown cannabis. So on their one gigantic facility, and we should just talk about it right now. It's 1.1 million square feet of best in class greenhouse operations. And the company produces 75,000 kilograms a year at this facility. And they're currently in the process of expanding. They're looking to double. They're building another 1.1 million square foot facility to double it up and hit 150,000 kilograms of dried flower a year.
Wow.
It's huge.
That's massive. And, I guess when you have more than a quarter of a century of growing experience, you can do that much because you have experts in certain different areas of how to grow maybe or the process. But when you have that much experience, you might as well use it as much as you can. And it sounds like they are, and probably plan to do even more expansion in the future.
Yeah, that's right. Worth talking about too. So there's a greenhouse facility that's currently owned and operated by Village Farms. That Village Farms has said, hey, if you need it to Pure Sun Farms, it's an option. So let's say legalization cannabis takes off, Pure Sun Farm needs to expand even more. There's an additional 2.6 million square feet of growing facility at their, it's within reach if they need it, which is pretty cool.
Oh, man. So they can expand even more if they want to. And we're doing Island Honey today, but they have a really solid 8-strain lineup. I just thought of it. It's you have a strain for every member of your slow pitch team, and then one person sober to drive everybody home. So you could be like the Sun Farm slow pitch team, and everybody represents a different strain. I mean, this lineup of strains that they have is pretty solid.
It is for sure, Dean. I like that ball team reference. That's great.
Yeah.
So let's get into the 8. Island Honey, sativa. Definitely one of my favorites. I've tried it out. It's super tasty and smooth, and we'll get into it in a bit. They've got a Critical Cali Mist. They've got a Purple Sun God, Afghan Kush, White Rhino, Hash Plant. There's a Pure Sun CBD, and they have a headband as well. Out of those strains, I've tried the Island Honey, the White Rhino, and the Afghan Kush. Mm-hmm. So the only ones that we've seen in Alberta so far. All are good. All were great. Very good price point. The White Rhino was super good. It was covered in trichomes, gave me a real nice indica buzz. Highly recommended stuff. If you haven't tried any Pure Sun Farms, give it a shot. The 1 gram options are coming at a great price point, and it's worth checking out.
I'm really looking forward to diving into a few of their strains that are here, and like we talked about the experience that they have. These guys have like years and years of data, right? Like when you have 25 years of growing experience combined, they've been collecting data for a long time.
Yeah, this is really cool to see. The team at Pure Sun Farms, they've been collecting detailed sunlight and environmental information at their greenhouse facility for more than a decade. And it gives them an incredible depth of data to use to adjust their cultivation process on a plant-by-plant basis. So 10 years of collecting this information, it's big shout outs to those guys out there, man. Like they know what they're doing. They've started in vegetables, transferred into cannabis. It's awesome. That's great. That's life. That's BC.
Yeah, I love the vegetable connection for sure. And when we talk about the history of Island Honey, the lineage specifically, we know a lot about one parent and not a lot about another.
Yeah, for sure. So the genetics of Island Honey is early pearl, which is kind of a rare sativa. It's got unknown genetics too. The seed bank that created it wouldn't share. So, but we do know that it's definitely on the sativa side of things. And so it's early pearl crossed with Jack Herer, which we are familiar with. That's a legendary sativa. We've talked about Jack the Emperor of Hemp on the show before.
Mm-hmm.
And the genetics of Jack Herer is it's haze, it's Northern Lights number 5, and a Shiva skunk, all 3-way crossed. This is a legendary sativa award-winning. They've even got the Jack Herer Cup every year in Vegas. The guy is a legend.
That is so cool. I just and well deserved, right? Like this is a man who crusaded and contributed a lot to cannabis, and is one of the big reasons why we know so much about cannabis and are allowed to smoke and ingest and consume cannabis right now. So he should have a strain named after him.
Yeah, I agree. He was a big time activist to help us get to where we are today. For sure.
All right. The website, puresunfarms.com. I like it. I find the information is, they have good information. It's a real sharp website.
Yeah, I like it. User friendly too. I like the artwork and like you had said, there's good information. It was like everything you kind of needed was there presented to you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty dope.
There's something that's really cool. Obviously, when you click on one of their 8 strains, it gives you a lot of information, including the terpene profile, which is really appreciated for people that want to, have a specific terpene or cannabinoid in their cannabis. But something neat happens on this website if you just sit back and wait.
Yeah, totally. The stickers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I like that. It's just something that if you're inactive for like, I don't know, what is it, 10, 15 seconds or something like that, then all of a sudden these stickers pop up to kind of just remind you that, hey, you're still on our website.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time that happened to me, I was, it was like right over some information that I was like trying to read, and I'm like, what the heck? And I go to move the mouse, and it disappeared. It's kind of like they're playing a trick on us.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So anyway, puresunfarms.com, sharp website, good stuff. The THC on this 1 gram package that I picked up is 15.3%. So that's kind of second level, would you say?
Yeah, I would say, not for a beginner. Like if someone just brand new to cannabis, don't jump into this one first. Like, I mean, you can, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would, highly not. And it is, as we mentioned, a pretty heavy sativa for somebody maybe using cannabis for the first time, a heavy sativa could bring on some paranoia. You know, a heavy sativa can bring on some paranoia for some experienced cannabis users as well. So this is definitely for somebody that's, not new to cannabis, but ready to take a step up and has experienced some of the highs with cannabis and kind of knows what to expect a little bit. This would be a good stepping stone strain, I would think.
Yeah, well said, Dean. I like that.
All right. The name, when we talk about what's in a name, this one seems like it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's definitely. So this strain was created on Vancouver Island, by the way, the Kootenays. And so there's your island.
Yep.
And then the honey, for me, it's got to do with the smell of it. Like, if you smell this bud, it really does smell like sweet honey. So, where it's from, what it smells like, island honey, there you go.
Easy peasy. The look, we're looking at it right now. If you're watching on social media, YouTube, the Weed Tube, we appreciate it. You can, by the way, find out more episodes at www.cannabis101podcast.ca. But it comes in a 1 gram pouch, so it's not, over packaged. And you can see, if you're watching, there's the little flap on it that when you're picking these up, that's what you use to open it, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, you're going to wreck your bag, which I've done so many times.
Yeah.
Worth talking about with their packaging, Dean. So right now, we've got 1 grams, 3.5 grams. I did see 7 grams available to order for this coming week. But on their website now, they're advertising ounce bags, so 28 gram bags that we're going to see at this very competitive Pure Sunfarms pricing. As an Alberta retailer, gimme. Like, we will sell the crap out of those. So hopefully we do start to see them soon. They're in BC right now, strictly in BC, but hopefully they get some up to Alberta.
Well, and that's we've seen 1 ounce pouch come out already. So would this be the second one then?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, we've had a lot of 15 gram containers and stuff.
Yeah.
That a little over a half, I guess. But so far just the 1 ounce bag from Original Stash, and I know I feel like a lot of the LPs are working on getting that going because they've kind of seen the success and the demand for it. But Pure Sunfarms is going to be doing that here soon. So if you're in BC, go out and get a big OZ. But here in Alberta, hopefully we'll get them soon.
All right. As far as the look of the buds, I'm looking at it and I see some bright green, 2 tones of green, the darker, but there's the bright it really stands out for me. It's really beautiful when you can have the 2 distinct colors of green.
Yeah, for sure. It's nicely trimmed stuff too. And when I got it, I thought it just looked really nice. I got a 3.5 of it, and I had 3 good sized buds and a couple of little guys. But I feel like they do a good trim job over there and decent trichome coverage. It's not necessarily everything you look for, but it's not caked in trichomes, but It looks great to me. I'm a fan of how it looks.
Yeah, I just I love that the color scheme with it, and light orange pistils. They don't they're not bursting with it, but you can see them. As I look at the screen a little bit on the more on the left there, but really good trim job as you mentioned. Terpene profile. What are we looking at with this one?
Yeah, so the top 3 terpenes with Island Honey are myrcene, linalool, and humulene. Caryophyllane's in there too. It's the 4th one too, but we'll just get into the top 3. So with that, the myrcene's going to kind of give it that honey. It's going to provide a little bit of that honey too, is what I had listed here, as well as like a lemon curd kind of a flavor, and that's the humulene as well. So it's definitely an interesting kind of the flavor profile, and even the smell. It's like sweet and honey, right? So it's an interesting strain for sure.
Yeah, and we talk about, myrcene often gets described as a couch lock terpene, but here it is, one of the most prominent terpene profiles in a real pure sativa. So, how cannabis affects one person is different than the other. And maybe I'll get you to just run through the entourage effect, which terpenes play a large part in.
Yeah, for sure. So with cannabis, a lot of people come into stores and say like, I need high THC. It's got to be above 25 or I won't even get high. With that though, I mean, there's some stuff you can smoke some 12% THC and it'll get you just rocked.
Yep.
With that, so we have the THC content within our cannabis. We have the CBD content, and then we have the terpene content. And all three of those factored in together are going to give you that desired effect, that entourage effect. And with terpenes, I don't, just for maybe some new listeners, let's talk about terpenes. They're the aromatic oils that secrete out of the cannabis glands, and they make your bud smell and taste a certain way. And there has been known to have some effects will be involved with that too. And with that, everyone's different with those effects. So you can't say, strains of heavy and myrcene are going to put everyone on the couch, because just like here, it's not. There's a lot of sativas that will have myrcene in it. So it's not there's a lot of generalizations with terpenes. And I do feel like the combination of certain terpenes together, mixing together, are going to give a different effect than the terpene on its own.
Sure. Yeah. Well said. And I appreciate the explanation of the terpenes as well. So when we talk about all these terpenes and we've talked about the THC, let's chat about the desired effect. We should point out for new listeners and viewers that cannabis does affect everybody a little bit differently. But what is the desired effect generally, and from your experience with this?
Yeah, so when I had mine, I definitely noticed like euphoric blasts to the head and to the body. It was very smile-inducing, puts me in a good mood. It's good mood, bud. I also found there was like a long-lasting body buzz too, which is kind of a treat with the sativa, because I still felt, upbeat, had some good energy. I also found it to be, a good focused high. Pretty sure I did some graphic work with my Island Honey.
Nice.
Some cleaning too, and got right in the zone. So, it's really, really nice sativa dominant high.
Awesome. The 3 W's now. What, when, and who is this good for?
Yeah. So what it's good for, board game nights with pals, late afternoon smoke on a day off, cleaning the house, fun conversations. I think really like being social, like with your pals. Obviously not at the moment, but when we get back to normal things. Yeah.
Well, we could do it this way. Like, you can get together with your pals, have a Skype strain session, right? Like, that's exactly what you can, everybody picks up the same strain and you all get together, and because we should not be sharing joints. We should not be sharing bongs. We should not be, and cannabis is a very social culture, but that is the part of that culture that we have to just put aside. So we have to have our sessions through Skype or whatever else we have now, FaceTime, things like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's we gotta change and adapt. I've never had so many lone sessions by myself. I miss getting high with my peeps, having a doob or two, after a long day. But,
no doubt.
It's what we got to do for now. But you know what? We will persevere. We will get through this. Everyone does just need to do what we can,
For sure. All right. So we know what, when, and who it's good for. Good social strain, board games, wake and bake, daytime. You probably want to cap this like 8-9 o'clock before, so you want to be able to get a good sleep. And level 2 intermediate smokers, so it's a good stepping stone, step up strain. I'm gonna fire this up. Tell me about the taste test. What are you getting when you smoke this? What are the dominant flavors that you're going through?
For sure. So, like the name suggests, it is honey flavored. I found there to be some citrus zests when I was smoking it, but ultimately it's sweet and it's smooth. It goes down nice. It's easy on the throat. It's just well done, bud.
I would wholeheartedly agree.
Mm-hmm.
The honey is so distinct.
Yeah.
Like it's like that's, I don't know if that helps with the smoothness of you think honey, you put honey in your tea and things like that.
Yeah.
But you can definitely get that some bursts of citrus and there might not be a lot of caryophyllene, but there is a hint of spice at the end. I find you get that on the exhale. I find that a lot with caryophyllene is that I get it kind of like this little hint on the way out, a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, in the exhale there. You pointed that out a couple episodes, and then as soon as you said that, now I notice it more and more.
Yeah.
Now that it's been said and it's out there.
Yeah, I like it. Sweet and smooth, definitely. From Island Honey, a sativa, heavy sativa from Pure Sun Farms out of Delta, BC. Really, really good stuff. All right, let's wrap this up quickly, Chris, with just chatting about some of the precautions you guys are taking on Jasper Ave at Nova Cannabis when it comes to the pandemic and COVID-19. Just so people are looking at, you guys are still open, but you're taking every precaution right now to make sure people, customers and staff are safe.
Yeah, that's right, Dean. We definitely are. This is top of mind. We've reduced our hours, and we are definitely monitoring what's going on with the government and with Health Canada. And as of right now, we're okay to be open. So we've really shifted a lot of the business. We've got hands-free menus now. We're disinfecting all the time, washing hands all the time. We're still accepting cash currently, but we do prefer debit transactions just to kind of limit the contact with cash. And should any of my staff do take a cash transaction, it's an immediate hand wash right afterwards. I've never washed my hands more. There's other options too. A lot of cannabis stores, us included, you're available to do like Leafly pickup, where you can place an order from home so that the order gets ready to go and so that you're in the store for a smaller amount of time. We're trying to limit any kind of interactions. We've also got signs up requesting that people keep that 6 foot 2 meter kind of distance in between each other. It's been wild, and like as we said earlier, like we'll get through this here. Everyone's got to do their part, and but yeah, we're doing all that we can at Nova. Like I said, making sure that we take all the proper steps, and it's been interesting.
Yeah, we have to. Everywhere I go, whether it's to the cannabis store or to grocery store, I use TAP. And I'm sure you guys are disinfecting all the tab, the pay tabs, and when people do use the buttons. But it's so easy. Just go in, tap, put your license down on the counter so that you guys can check it, and nobody has to have any kind of physical interaction. It's easy to do. There are things to do, and we just all have to be patient and work together right now.
Yeah, you said it, man. And disinfect. I mean, the hand sanitizer. This morning at the drive-through, and I had a glove. I put a glove on to handle the machine, and I had a little like pen cap. That was, I'm trying to avoid things, but then as I handed it back to her, I took my glove off with my clean hand, and I'm like, well, I'm about to, I've got my food here, so I've got my disinfectant, my hand sanitizer in the car. It's important to be mindful of that. Like, don't, anytime you're going to be touching your face or any kind of food or anything, you're going to be anything that's getting close to you, just make sure your hands are clean and give them a good wash.
Good stuff, Chris. This has been interesting, but the way it is today in these times. But we did Island Honey Sativa from Pure Sun Farms. You can find out more information about them at www.puresunfarms.com and now in the Alberta Rec Market. Chris, as always, thanks very much for joining me. We'll chat next week.
Sounds good, Dean. Thanks for having me.
This is the Cannabis 101 podcast, your guide through the legalization and consumption of cannabis in Canada and beyond.
Big thanks to Chris Ianson for doing the Skype interview, and Tyler. We are working on the lip sync. I'm not the smartest guy technically, so it does take me a little bit longer to figure these things out. So please bear with us if you are watching. Also want to tell you about What's Your Strain, and that's something that Chris and I want to do when we can get back to hanging around humans again. But it's simple. You suggest a strain you would like us to review, and if we can do it, we'll pick it. We'll invite you into the studio with us when we record so you can ask your own questions. And courtesy of the Cannabis 101 podcast, I'm going to give you a $100 shopping spree. I'm going to get my good friend Chris to help you out as a personal shopper. So that's What's Your Strain. All you have to do is email us, cannabis101podcast@gmail.com. Tell us what strain you would like us to review, and if we pick yours, you are in luck. Again, we'll be doing that once we can get back and chatting with different people. And you may be listening to this, or you may be watching this. We are on YouTube, and we are on the WeedTube, and we are streaming this show from time to time on our social media networks. So thank you very much. If you have just joined us on one of those streams, you can check out full episodes at cannabis101podcast.ca. And that is pretty much going to wrap things up for the program today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to Tyler Smith from The Dope Show, as well, of course, to David Wiley from the OZ, OkanaganZ.com/OZ for This Week in Cannabis News, and Chris Ianson, our educator and the manager of Nova Cannabis on Jasper Avenue. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please leave us a review. Really, really helps. And please subscribe, especially if you're watching on YouTube or the WeedTube. Please subscribe to our channel, and you get everything we put out as soon as we put it out there. And leaving us a review certainly helps to make this show a whole lot better. If you'd like to be a part of the program as a guest or an advertiser, please email me at cannabis101podcast@gmail.com. And that'll wrap things up for another week. Thank you very much. We do have some fun things on the way, particularly now we have the video sorted out for the most part. So keep it locked on cannabis101podcast.ca for all your cannabis education and entertainment needs. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody. And please have a safe and fun week if you can. Remember, it's not just about getting high, it's about getting healthy.
Grown very fond of. You get in my in my brain, they're driving me insane. Oh, hello, toxic, yeah.